So Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, one of the members of the squad, and from my perspective, one of the more progressive members of both the House and the Senate, has introduced a bill called the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act. Like the name suggests, it aims at canceling rent and mortgage payments for the duration of this economic crisis that we're experiencing due to the coronavirus pandemic. And I believe if this legislation were to pass, which if the politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, were acting in any type of sensible and rational way in responding to this unprecedented economic crisis that we were experiencing, this shit would have already been fast tracked through. This would have been done, at least a month ago. But unfortunately, we don't live in a sane and rational world when it comes to U.S. politics, and most of the politicians are bought and paid for by these large corporations and various moneyed interests, whether it be Wall Street, the big, oil companies, health insurance companies, drug companies, the military-industrial complex, these media companies, etc. So this plan, like I said, if passed, would go for the duration of the crisis or up to 1 year from it being enacted into law. Fully just 100% endorse this. Again, this is something that should have been done many weeks, if not months ago. I mean, there was a lot of people coming just April 1st who are not going to be able to pay their rent or pay their mortgages because, our economy is tanking. 22 million plus people have lost their jobs in the last month alone, at least 10% of the workforce, and that's at that's a lowball estimate. It's probably going to be much higher than that, and a lot of sectors of the economy have been really negatively affected. And obviously, again, these type of crises affect the most vulnerable and marginalized populations, especially lower income folks. Communities of color have been especially negatively impacted from the health side of this pandemic due to the just structural racism that exists with regards to access to health care, as well as communities of color more likely to have these underlying health conditions due to structural racism. They're more likely to live in these polluted communities that are more likely to be located next to like oil refineries, like the Cancer Alley. I believe that's in I want to say Louisiana, where just all these oil refineries and places like that are more than likely to be placed near these marginalized communities. So putting that aside, and and then people might say, well, what about the poor landlords? How are they gonna make their money doing nothing and collecting all these people's wealth? Well, okay, this actually accounts for that too, because I suppose not every landlord is a complete succubus that owns hundreds of rental units or hundreds of homes and rents them out or whatever. Some people maybe only have one or two properties, and they might be pretty reasonable and nice people. Okay. This act allows landlords to be covered, to be paid back for any losses they're experiencing right now by applying for this program through the government. Awesome. And same thing with the mortgage payments are being suspended. Some of the program exists for that, for the banks or whoever owns those houses that people are still paying their mortgages on. They can apply for that as well. So kudos to Ilhan Omar for introducing this Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act. We'll see if it gets any traction. We'll see if Nancy Pelosi allows it to get to a vote. She's obviously not she's not a progressive member of Congress at all. I hope she gets unseated. Shahid Buttar would be such a amazing Congress person and a huge, massive improvement over Nancy Pelosi. So we'll see, what happens with this bill, but it's definitely a start. It's a little bit too late, in my opinion, because like I said, there was a lot of people coming April 1st who weren't able to pay their rent or pay their mortgage because they lost their job, because they got furloughed, because they couldn't find a job, because our economy is completely tanking. And I feel like the Democrats and the so-called progressive wing of both the House and the Senate, frankly, lost a lot of their leverage when they completely and fully supported that third stimulus package by voting for it unanimously, at least in the Senate. And I believe maybe 2 members of the House voted against it, but I'm not even sure those were Democrats necessarily. I think probably one was Thomas Massey of Kentucky, the Libertarian Republican from there. So I mean, and again, that third stimulus package was a 4.5 trillion with a T dollar giveaway to these massive corporations, while everybody else got crumbs, if that. So I mean, Democrats and progressives don't honestly have a whole lot of leverage right now to get something like this passed. I mean, they should theoretically, you would think, at least be able to get it past the House, because it's, controlled by the Democrats, who are, supposed to be on the side of the working people and are supposed to be more progressive and populist, at least in theory, than the Republicans. But we've seen time and time again that's oftentimes not the case, unfortunately, due to neoliberal corporate centrists like Nancy Pelosi, who holds the keys to the kingdom, and a lot of these politicians aren't willing to go up against her and call her out, or other members of the Democratic leadership or establishment. So kudos to Ilhan Omar. We'll see what happens to it. It's obviously very much needed, but more oftentimes than not, these type of policies and it should be noted, a majority of Americans support this right now, around 55%, obviously even higher among Democrats, almost half of independents, and I want to say maybe 40 or so percent of Republicans support this, and 55% of the U.S. population overall supports canceling rent and mortgage payments. Makes sense. Again, 22 million people have lost their jobs in the last 4 weeks. It's record numbers basically each week of unemployment claims. And, how do you expect people to be able to pay rent and mortgage when our economy is approaching, or will be approaching, Great Depression levels of unemployment? So, but then again, oftentimes things that we really need and that the majority of the U.S. supports, our politicians don't support, because they're corporate, puppet masters don't want them to support it, like Medicare for all, for example, or living wage. But we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong on this issue, because a lot of people are suffering in really big ways right now, and just, the economic toll that people are experiencing, and just how it really weighs on your psyche if you don't know how you're going to pay your rent, how you're going to pay your mortgage. These bills keep stacking up. So hope Congress does the right thing, Senate too, but unfortunately it usually doesn't happen. Peace. Much love.